Hi, welcome to the Social Media Marketing Meetup group. My name is Kim Adamoff, and I am the host tonight and moderator. Our topic is social media advertising, and our guests, our panelists tonight are Lars Bredahl. He's a digital marketing coordinator at First Bank, where he manages data-driven inbound marketing strategies to help the up-and-coming regional bank take on the big guys while maintaining a strong focus on personalized customer service and local community. Lars was recently named one of the top 25 community bank influencers on Twitter and is a regular speaker at regional marketing conferences. Outside of First Bank, he's worked for a variety of clients, including USO of North Carolina, Coca-Cola, the American Petroleum Institute, CRE, Dow Jones, and Duke Realty. Richard Jordan is a proven talent management and talent acquisition leader, consultant, and executive career coach. Richard is known for leading successful change, building and leading high-performing teams, and for sourcing, securing, and strengthening high-potential talent in Europe, North America, and Africa. He has a passion for helping organizations and individuals to develop talent and career transition strategies to position themselves successfully for future business and career success. Nina Martinez is the founder of Dots Media, an avid reader, chocolate lover, and computer programming enthusiast who enjoys the art of creating connections. Nina works with a team of qualified marketing professionals to provide established businesses and entrepreneurial startups with integrated marketing solutions and design services that enhance brand awareness, encourage social engagement, and drive conversions. With what makes her marketing team different is their genuine investment in truly understanding clients' businesses, their holistic approach, and effectiveness in creating cohesive strategies that promote our clients in a way that measurably resonates with their clients' market communities. So welcome to our panelists tonight. We're going to get started, and I have 5 questions for each panelist. We are recording a Hangout Live so that people in the world can see it right now on YouTube. I'm going to start with Lars and ask his 5 questions, then we'll move to Richard and then Nina. Okay, Lars, you ready?
Sure.
When did First Bank utilize paid social media promotions over organic?
So traditionally we've used a lot of just organic content in social media. We are still pretty early in our growth stages for social media. They had little to no presence before our team got there 2 years ago. So we've really just been trying to build up the community the old-fashioned way and developing a lot of content that way. When we have used paid, it's been more campaign focused and it's more strategic as far as timing goes. We recently launched a new mobile app. So that was the time where we thought it was really important for us to push that a little bit further in social media and have some stronger calls to action involved and drive people to download the app. And we also did it when we released our first magazine. I guess it was Q1 of last year we did that. We do a quarterly magazine every quarter actually. So it's we use that with big content pieces, something that we want to collect leads on and really drive home. It's definitely worth the little extra money, the little extra boost on social.
Excellent. What are some best practices for crafting clickable Facebook ads?
I would say the first thing to think about is it eye-catching and visual? With any content, whether it's paid or just organic, I think using an eye-catching image is crucial. And so I would say that's definitely a big part of it. I think having a strong call to action. In the past, you would say, like to do X or something like that. I don't know if that's as effective as it used to be, just because Facebook is kind of backing away from that language. They don't like you being too salesy. But you can, if you're using just a strong call to action, like discover our new magazine or take a look at this new video, just something very action-driven and very clear, so people know what they're doing when they're clicking. I think you don't want a very ambiguous ask where they don't realize they're going to a landing page where they have to fill out a form. You want them to understand what they're getting into.
Excellent. How do Facebook custom audiences and lookalike audiences work, and how has First Bank used them?
So Facebook Audience is still relatively new. We just started using it in the last few months, and as we started to pool together a lot of data from our current customers at the bank, Facebook allows you to upload a CSV of email addresses of all of your customers, and you'll match them up with existing profiles on Facebook. So it'll say if my Gmail account is also tied to a Facebook account, they will automatically say, all right, this guy's on Facebook, this is who he is. It doesn't tell the advertiser exactly who that person is, because that'd be a little creepy, but it gives you an idea of where your audience is, what their demographics look like, and then it lets you create a lookalike audience, which is the follow-up to that, and that is simply just another list that matches or is very similar to your existing audience that you created or that you uploaded. So Facebook again uses all that data and looks at where all of your people are from your list, and then it finds similar people on their platform. So it's been really powerful. It makes it a lot more targeted when you're developing ads, and you can create ads for that audience. So if you wanted to send ads just to your customers, you could do that, or just some of your prospects from a list, you could do that, or you could create a lookalike list of Facebook users who you may have never had contact with before. So it's been very powerful, and we just started using it for some of those campaigns that I mentioned earlier.
Excellent. Aside from clicks and reach, what are some other ways to determine the success of your paid promotions?
I think a big thing is, obviously it's great to see clicks and impressions on your ads, but I think for us, we're looking more at the steps they're taking beyond that. So we build a lot of landing pages for these larger content downloads. So we're looking at what people did after they clicked on our ad and what they did after they got to the page, and did they fill out a form, did they download our piece. We can track all of that, and Facebook actually has gotten more advanced with their conversion tracking features. So now you can, if you use a little strip of code, you can actually put something in your Apple iTunes page so they can track if someone downloaded your app and opened it up on their phone, and it'll charge you per app download, which is great. And we're still trying to work out the fees for that, but we'd like to do that. And there's also other ways to track. You can look at we have tracked downloads of our magazine, and it'll only charge you every time someone actually goes through the process of filling out the form and downloading that piece. So it's for us, it gives us a lot better idea of ROI. We're not just paying per click, which you can do obviously still, but this it'll be a little bit more expensive, but then we can see exactly how much we paid per download or per magazine download. So it's it definitely is a lot more fleshed out and a lot more detailed.
What can marketers do to improve the experience after someone clicks on an ad?
Well, I mentioned earlier, when you're creating the ad, be very clear and explicit in your call to action and the ad copy. They don't give you a lot of space on Facebook ads to use, so use the image wisely, use the copy wisely, and you want to be eye-catching. You want people to click, but at the same time, you don't want to confuse them. That's just going to turn them off, and then you won't get any clicks in the future. And then in the following stage, make sure that you're eliminating as many extra steps as possible. So if you want somebody to look at a page, read a little bit, and then if they're interested in downloading something like a magazine, you should have all of that right there. You shouldn't have a page where someone has to click around or look for a sub page to find the magazine. You want it to be very straightforward, very clear, so they know from ad to page to download every step that they need to take. And even if there are multiple pages, make sure you're clear, make sure they're simple and broken up in a logical way. So I recommend definitely using landing pages, using a marketing automation platform if you have it, to kind of streamline that process, and just make sure you're delivering on what you're selling.
This isn't on your list of questions, but when you mentioned landing pages, where are you sending them for the landing page? What do you consider a landing page?
So we use a platform called Parda, and it's actually owned by Salesforce. And it's a marketing automation platform. It's kind of like HubSpot or Marketo, one of those guys. And it lets you obviously create emails and schedule social media posts, and it also lets you create these landing pages. And you don't need coding experience to build a page. They have a lot of out-of-the-box templates you can use that are tried and true. pretty standardized. But we also have a developer team that we use to help to kind of tweak it and make it fit our style and our brand a little bit more. But these pages basically are just, for example, for the magazine we created for small business owners, it's got big image of the cover of the magazine. It's got a little blurb about it and some bullet points about what articles are inside. And then it has a little form on the right column that people can fill out and click download magazine, and it's pretty easy. So it's, we tweaked their templates a little bit, but they're all very straightforward and very easy to understand. So
do you use any landing pages right on Facebook, or you're taking them off Facebook somewhere else?
Correct. Yeah, we have in the past. We've embedded. You can actually take those pages if you really want to, and embed them in Facebook. So that's also something you can do. Facebook's kind of moved around their little. I don't know if they still call them this, but they used to call them the apps on top of the page. And they used to be more prominent, where you could put custom apps up there and put links for your Facebook landing pages in there. They've kind of shifted those around. They're a lot more hidden now. So we've just decided to send people straight to our part landing pages, although we do have a couple that are embedded in Facebook for people who stumble upon it and want to learn more. But we figured we'd just cut out that step.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. Mm-hmm. We're going to have questions at the end, so make sure you write down your questions for Lars. Richard, you're up. Let's find your questions. Okay. How has recruiting been transformed by social media?
Well, it's been completely transformed. I think the recession has accelerated a lot of things that were starting to happen. The growth of social media, particularly the adaptation of LinkedIn by not just progressive technology recruiting organizations, but everybody has been it's been like wildfire over the last 7-8 years. So it's completely different. So is job seeking. The whole paradigm has changed. It's started to kind of rehumanize the recruiting process, although a lot of organizations haven't yet aligned their systems to catch up. So it's completely different than what it used to be even 6 years, 7 years ago.
As a business looking to build a network of people they can reach out to for future needs, how should they approach this issue?
It's kind of interesting because, again, during the years of the recession, most organizations have been in a recruiting kind of mindset of sort of assuming there's an abundance of talent without really realizing that in the background, all the demographic factors are still working away. I think it's 11,000 boomers leaving the job market for the next 19 years each day. So it's sort of organizations that are looking over the horizon are starting to think about, yikes, we need to start to treat people slightly differently in the recruiting process, as well as the employees we still have. We need to have more notions of candidate care, and we need to be thinking ahead to candidate pools. So organizations that are thinking that they perhaps might need to be active in certain sectors of the labor market where they don't quite need them yet, they're starting to use things like Avature to build talent communities. And there's a very well-regarded survey of sort of recruiting trends from an organization called Career Crossroads, which I think for the first time in 2013, something like 4% of all placements are now coming from talent communities. I think we're going to see that deepen and broaden. 2 years ago, the pharmaceutical industry, all the life sciences groups are really getting into this in a big way. A couple of years before that, they were laying loads of people off. So it's an organization that wants to be thinking strategically about where talent is going to be and how work needs to change for the future. They will be starting to use a lot more of these talent community technologies.
Okay, and as a prospective employee, how can someone use social media to get noticed by a company on social that they want to work for?
I think a good candidate should be thinking of what their brand is, not just for the job they happen to be in, but for what they choose their career to be. I mean, most people will change and evolve and create their careers as they grow and develop through. And that trend has dramatically sort of accelerated again during the last 7 years. So. But recruiting and job seeking has always really been about relationships. It's always been that. It still is. And so whatever somebody can do to figure out a way to work around this broken paradigm of the sending a resume in good faith to an applicant tracking system of a large organization, spending 2 hours or whatever it is on average to fill those out, and then never hearing anything. There are many things that people can do. I mean, your own blog, your own web page, things like About Me. These are things that people used to get noticed and to start to foster a dialogue with a decision maker, a hiring manager who isn't actively hiring. I mean, trying to get into an organization when they're hiring is like trying to enter a castle under siege. Okay, so try and do it when the castle's not under siege, and become visible and get walked in.
So basically what you're saying is have your LinkedIn profile be about who you are, so it's a personal branding tool for yourself, and then also as a recruiter who is looking for people, you're using LinkedIn to search for people.
90% of recruiters are either currently using or plan to use LinkedIn this year for recruiting.
Have you ever advertised on LinkedIn to find people?
Yep.
And how did you go about deciding how to start a LinkedIn? Like, what made you want to advertise?
Well, whether we like it or not, most people that are looking for careers are on LinkedIn. LinkedIn dominates that space completely. LinkedIn have become much more aware of the power of them. We're the product, we're not the customer on LinkedIn. So basically, LinkedIn has actually made it very attractive for organizations looking to recruit people and people looking to be recruited to pay them a subscription to become more visible to each other. And so whether you like it or not, as a recruiting organization, you need to have a presence there. But there are other things that you can do in addition. So LinkedIn is just probably the best channel right now, but there are other channels, and there will be other technologies following LinkedIn. But a job seeker needs, I mean, it's no longer optional. You have to have a 100% complete profile, and you've got to have a lot of recommendations, and that's now the bare minimum for effective job seeking.
Even for if you're not job seeking, it's still good for personal branding to promote yourself.
Yeah.
If somebody wanted to start advertising on LinkedIn, what is the one thing they need to do?
What, advertising jobs or
just reaching their target audience? What should they have first?
Figure out who their target audience is and figure out the things which are actually going to attract and keep those people's attention, because there are so many distractions. So have a clear message, have a compelling message, and people will gather around that.
Do you have to have, can you just have a profile to advertise, or do you need anything else? Do you need to have a business page to be able to advertise?
I'm not sure. I don't think you have to have a business page to advertise, but I'm sure LinkedIn will be happy to answer anyone's question.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to Nina now. What are some of the first steps VDOTS Media takes when creating a social media strategy for clients?
Piggybacking off of what some of those last questions were, the first thing we do is, try to determine what our clients are looking to achieve and who they believe is the audience that will actually perform those actions. So you have to have a very clear understanding of who you're looking to capture in the market. As you mentioned, there's a lot of distractions out there. And so the more focused your campaign is per these different personas or groups of individuals that you're looking to target, the more likely it is you'll capture that person's attention. And that's the person who's most likely to take the desired action you have. So what we really push is trying to determine who those audiences are, and then making sure the message is appropriate for them and appropriate for the channel. I'm sure both the individuals next to me too can confirm. It's one of those situations where the campaign that you create on one channel is not necessarily the campaign you're going to want to do on another. So making sure that it matches the channel and matches the audience.
Okay. What are the best pieces of advice you can give to anybody setting up social media campaigns?
That's a great question. We have for a lot of prospective clients that come in, they have these great ideas. You know, they may have these beautiful visuals. They may have these fantastic call to actions that they have, or, you know, very creative promotions. And really what, you know, the same amount of time you apply into kind of doing those creative steps to get the campaign, you really need to implement the same amount of time in setup. You know, it's one of those things where if you don't do the proper setup, like have the landing page that Lars talked about, make sure that you have the right tracking elements on those pages. You know, Lars mentioned a little snippet of code that Facebook offers. LinkedIn, you know, you have the same opportunities to put in snippets on your pages. And then beyond those channels, you know, I highly recommend each of you take advantage of some kind of web analytics tool. Google Analytics is a free platform, but using that so that you can track the behavior that your audience is taking when they're on the page. It's one thing to see how many people clicked and got to your ad. It's one thing to see how many people actually converted. It's another thing to be able to see, hey, when they came to my page, did they look around or did they leave immediately? When they came to my page, did they go and, you know, browse other pages, or did they leave but come back sometime in a 30, 60, 90-day window? Those are things you wouldn't be able to do unless you set up properly in the very beginning and start collecting that data.
What steps, if any, need to be taken to support social media ad campaigns but are often forgotten?
A lot of that goes back into the setup and just making sure that you have those in place. Other things are if you're supporting your campaigns with any other channels. Actually, you know what, let me back up. The biggest thing I think you can do to help support these campaigns that's often forgotten is I see a lot of prospective clients come in and they're using LinkedIn or Facebook or another channel and they're pushing all of these ads. And that's great, even if they're set up, it's fantastic. But really, your particular audience is also looking at these social media channels to be social, to start conversations, to get to know you. And so I think the best thing you can do is to ensure that you're not pushing out ads 100% of the time, that you're mixing it up with content that makes your audience see you as somebody they want to get to know and come back to often. You guys know with maybe in your email inbox, where if you know there's a certain store you visited or something and they're constantly pushing out buy this, buy this, buy this now. It may not necessarily be something that you're interested in reading. B2B has a huge issue with this. I see often where everything is very salesy, but if you can give them a newsletter or a magazine that offers additional value, that will certainly take the brand to the next level more often than not.
Are there ways to further support social media ad campaigns on non-social platforms?
Yes. Let's say you're a business and you're an e-commerce business, right? And you've started these campaigns on these various social channels to attract people to come in and buy something off of your site. And then as you have traffic coming from these different campaigns, obviously people are becoming more familiar with you, which is what you anticipated, right? Or hoped would happen anyway. If you're also implementing other platforms like Google AdWords or Bing Ads, there's certain steps you can take to kind of segment out that traffic so that it doesn't affect your other channels so much. So for example, if you're using a platform like Google AdWords to also promote your products and you have a special promotion going on that's only available to your Facebook audience, you might want to go into AdWords and consider excluding keywords that have Facebook in it or the name of your promotion or whatever be the case, so you're not paying necessarily for that traffic. Or you may want to allocate certain budget to that, so that when people are clicking those ads, they can be taken to your Facebook ad as opposed to some other page you have on your site. So it's just making sure that you have a very integrated strategy, and what you're doing in one channel, you're either complementing it with others or excluding it in such a way that you're not incurring additional fees you wouldn't otherwise want.
Excellent. How does one determine if it's best to manage efforts in-house or reach out to an agency?
So this is probably one of the most popular questions that I get, where it's like, hey, We're in a situation where, we have this budget and, let's say it's a limited budget. I had this limited budget. Is it worth me hiring an agency if I have a limited budget, or is this something that I can tackle on in-house? And I think the best way for small businesses or people who are interested in their personal brand to approach that question is, what is the amount of resources you're willing to tolerate? What is the amount of resources that you're looking to dedicate to realistically to get it done right? And if you can't do that, is it worth kind of losing out on the additional value that gets? And I'll give you a kind of an example of how that will work. Let's say you have this wonderful ad campaign, and you didn't necessarily go through all the steps because you didn't have the internal resources, time, money, whatever, know-how to set up your landing page with the appropriate snippets of code for one of those web analytics tools I was mentioning. Even if people convert, let me rephrase, even if people don't convert, right? You can actually still see value in that if you hired an agency, or if you had some kind of knowledge on how to do that tracking, because even if there's not any conversions in that moment, people didn't take the desired action, you've learned something based off of that data from setup that you can apply to the next campaigns. And if you can apply it to the next campaigns, then if you look at it in kind of like a long-term kind of outlook, then you've saved time and you've saved resources. And so the best way to kind of answer that question is to determine whether or not you're willing to put that effort and energy into doing it yourself, or if in the long term, like in a longer outlook, is it worth just getting an agency to assist you with it, even if it's just set up, and then you managing from that point forward, or having them assist you in the meantime.
Well, that's all the questions that I had from you. So I have one that I wrote down. What are some, this is open to anybody. What are some options for testing that your advertising is effective?
I'm sorry, one more time?
Yeah, so how can you test to make sure that your advertising is effective? Like, what can you do to make sure that you're getting your ROI, that it's working? When you're doing page search, it's still different than Google pay-per-click. Go ahead.
Let me take it first from the recruiting perspective. Well, I think, recruiting metrics around, source of hire. If the ad's working, if you're hiring lots of people from that particular source, or you're getting a higher proportion of high quality, shortlist caliber candidates from that source, it means that channel is working really well. You should keep doing it and try and negotiate a better deal with them next year.
Thank you.
It all really depends on the goal that you have, right, for your campaigns, and to be able to determine if it's working. I will say that it's not always about how many clicks you get, because, you can bring, I'm sure a lot of people have heard the phrase about bringing a horse to water, but you can't necessarily make them drink, right? It's one of those situations where you can have a fantastic ad that brings them to a page, but if they're not converting, then there's something wrong in that process. And it could be something about the page, it could be something about the audience, it could be, a number of things. But just making sure that you're looking at what's happening at the kind of end of the funnel, like Lara's mentioned. And then taking it a step further, even if they do make that conversion, that particular desired action you have, is it something that they're also coming back to you for later? Is there like a lifetime value of the customer or person you're trying to attract? And is that valuable to you?
Excellent. Anything else?
Yeah, I would have to agree with Nina. I think it all depends on what your goals are. I mean, if your goal is just build up a Facebook community and you just want to get likes for your page, then that would be your measure goal. And if you wanted to be getting recruits, that's where you'd be looking at. That would be your key performance indicator then. And then from our perspective, a lot of times it's just content downloads. And did they fill out the form? Did they download the magazine? Did they download or did they watch the video? It really just depends. But I think it's just important to figure out whatever that conversion, whatever that result is, figure out what that is worth to you, and then kind of determine what you're spending for your ads and what you're getting back, and figure out if it's worth it. Figure out if the ROI is worth it in the long run.
Excellent. Okay, so we're going to open it up for question time, and hopefully the camera will pick up. Can you just repeat the question because the camera's pointed at you?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name's Neil. This question is for any of you. So the latest, sexiest tool out there that I've heard about is Facebook dark posts. I'm curious if any of you have had experience with Facebook dark posts, and if so, could you tell about it?
I have not tried those yet. Have you?
You know, dark posts have been around for a little while. They keep kind of revamping the technology behind it. It's not, I'm sorry, I should have repeated the question here. The question was, you know, with one of these technologies that are available on Facebook is being able to utilize what's called dark posts, and whether or not we've had any experience with that. Essentially, being able to create a post that's not visible to all of your audience, but to a specific segment of that audience. I think that is highly effective for those people who are in industries where, for example, they maybe want to reward people who they've done business with, right? So let's say, again, e-commerce is a great example who utilizes dark posts pretty often, right? If I'm in e-commerce and I have, you know, a particular sale that's going on to those people who spend X amount of dollars or more on my site, maybe I've collected their emails or whatnot, and I can tag that back to Facebook, or, you know, to be able to see who those individuals are, giving them a certain type of ad that allows them or rewards them for being a loyal customer, and that particular sale not be visible to other people in the market. So that's one way that I've seen it utilized effectively. I will say that if other people come across it, you want to come across the ad who it wasn't necessarily intended for, make sure that it's not something that's going to entirely upset them. I've seen businesses, particularly in e-commerce again, where they give that kind of reward during like a Black Friday kind of sale, and they don't and maybe their standard Black Friday sale doesn't have as much of a discount. And so when people who those ads weren't necessarily intended for come across it, they're upset that they've spent X amount of dollars for a product when they could have gotten it for a lot less. And so then that puts the brand in a situation where they may have a lot of negative comments generated and affect their brand reputation. So just make sure that whatever you're doing, you do it wisely.
Yeah, and we've actually used them a lot when it just comes to more localized content and also industry-specific content. So we work with a lot of small businesses in different industries. So we have some content that's just directed towards self-storage industry, some that's for medical practices. And it's great to kind of sort of push it towards those segments, and it's hidden for everybody else. But if they do happen to stumble upon it, it's not the end of the world, because it's not like, you know, any secrets being disclosed or anything like that. But it's been great for that, and then also for our 3 states that we cover: North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia. Some content's more relevant than others, so we will use it for that occasionally.
Teresa?
Hi, I'm Teresa, and this is probably a question more for Lars or Nina. Have you guys had any experience with retargeting? Like, once you spend the money to get the person to your website or your page or whatever, I'm curious in hearing about ROI from somebody who's actually used it for real.
So the question is, have Lars or myself, though I have seen retargeting done in LinkedIn as well.
Okay.
Have we taken advantage of that functionality, and what kind of returns are available? Is that a good way to sum it up? Okay, great. Remarketing is absolutely fundamental for just about every industry. For just about all of them. Like, I can think of very few that it might not matter so much for. What I will tell you is, you know, it's what remarketing is, for those people who are not aware, is, let's say you've invested the time in, creating an ad and acquiring a certain audience, and now you want to send just ads to those audience members you've already acquired, right? You've probably seen a variation of this where you've looked at some kind of product online you were interested in, and then it started following you around on other sites. Can be a little creepy if not done with some taste. But you know, it's a situation where you've already spent the big dollars, right, relatively speaking, in acquiring a new customer. So it's very cheap for you to, in many instances, do this retargeting or this remarketing to reach back out to them and just remind them that you're there and present for whatever services or products it is that you offer. And more often than not, those particular campaigns have a much higher return than others. The only times where I've seen it not necessarily be effective is if the brand does not appreciate that audience enough to kind of take care of them. This could be, I know I keep going back to e-commerce, but it's just a perfect example where you see this happen all the time. Like, you know, if you have like bad shipping experiences or lots of negative press or things like that, that's the only time where remarketing might not necessarily be effective for you, right? So certainly a great channel to experience. And you can do that in search with your text ads, for example, on some of these channels, and you can also do it for display, and with social in particular, Facebook is a huge channel in which that's available.
And I don't want to deviate too much from the social media side, but we definitely use it a lot with email as well. So we, for example, we sent out a big email blast just talking about our new mobile app we have. We had the Android link, the Apple link, and we were able to track who clicked it, who opened the email, et cetera. And we set up a couple different retargeting campaigns where one was set up for those who did open the email but didn't click to download the app. And some of the emails that followed that were sort of, do you have any questions? Here's some FAQs. Here's a way you can talk to a representative, and kind of set up a drip campaign that way to help them out. And then the other campaign was for those who didn't open it at all. So we tried some different subject lines to try and catch their attention a little bit more. We had one that was more like what others are saying, and it pulled some of the reviews from the App Store that were already written, and we posted those in there to kind of make people feel more comfortable about it and understand it's secure. So it's definitely powerful in social and in paid search, but we definitely use it in email as well.
It's about retention, right? So.
Unless they've opted out completely, I think it's fair game. You should always be targeting everybody. So,
Michael?
Hi. Now, we haven't talked too much about Twitter, but do you find, return on investment with Twitter compared to, or does Facebook stand out a lot more?
Again, it really depends on your goal of the audience that you're trying to acquire. If you,
So we're talking about Twitter advertising.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. So the question was, do we have experience with Twitter advertising, and does that have generally a good ROI on it? Is it worth advertising that platform? I will tell you that based on my experience, people should look at these social channels more as brand awareness and opportunities for engagement. Channels like Twitter are not necessarily known to have a lot of conversions tied to them, right? It's not a channel that you can expect to get a lot of people to come to your page and then they perform this desired action in that particular moment. The conversion rates for this channel overall, across all industries, tends to be a lot lower than some other channels. However, if your goal is to reach a lot of people very quickly and bring them all back to your site and expose them to it, serving them some piece of quality content, recognizing that you're more so measuring whether or not they're return users back to the site or to the content, I think it's a very effective channel in that means. It's really great to kind of get the exposure. I have not seen a lot of campaigns necessarily be successful with, well, it just depends on goal, doesn't it, Lars?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll stop there and let Lars continue.
I mean, we typically don't use it a lot just because our audience isn't there yet. We're trying to grow that following. We're doing a lot of organic content. The good news is Twitter ads are cheap. I think they realize that their conversions are low, so they're a lot more affordable than LinkedIn and even Facebook as well. We've used Twitter mostly just for driving traffic to our articles, our blog posts, and it's pretty great for that. But it also just, it's usually, we can tell which segments are clicking more than others. So for us, our business content gets a lot of traffic from Twitter, but our personal finance and our mortgage content pretty much gets nothing from Twitter. So it like Nina was saying, it depends on your audience and it depends on your goals.
I think in recruiting it's been used quite effectively, but in the same kind of way, but like for a particular campaign, if you're finding it hard to find reach the right people, just bring them to your site or to the particular message you want to get them to, and then get them to stick there and go from there.
The one thing that I'll add about Twitter is that it only has geo-targeting, age, and gender, not age, it has gender and language. They're the only 3 targeting that you can do on Twitter ads. So that's why Facebook is so much more powerful, because you can do so many more targeting, where Twitter is more limited.
Twitter doesn't really have a good way to put in your real location. Some people just put like planet Earth or something like that, and it's not an exact science at all. So I think it's a little bit tougher to geographically target than other platforms.
Bob?
I've been running a long-term campaign on Facebook page. Several posts a day, intermixed with humor, quotes, and good landing stuff. I've noticed over the past week that my engagement has dropped. Noticed almost a quarter of what it was, and this is going over a 3-month span. And cost per click on ads have, like, I was getting below a penny, and now those are like starting to go up in multiples. Are you aware of anything that's going on with Facebook? Are they tweaking something?
Do you want to start?
Facebook is constantly tweaking stuff, right? So just kind of set in your brain that it's going to constantly tweak stuff. Now, when it tweaks, it's not so much of a situation like you would see on like organic search, where like some algorithm is going to cause you to lose a lot of fans overnight. So when I hear those kinds of things, my question would be, okay, when this traffic is consuming, when they're clicking on your ad, what are they doing next? Which was, one of the very first questions Lars mentioned was important here. Figuring out what they're doing next, because if you find that they're leaving immediately, then the question is not so much, well, was my ad itself bad, but were they expecting some kind of much more relevant piece? Is there something that I could have given them more of that, I just kind of wasn't living up to the expectation, and optimizing from there. Now, the cost that you accrue from a cost per click perspective with seeing that raise is probably a situation where whatever industry you're in, the people within that market, either there's new competitors that's come into the space that's vying for their attention, and kind of raising that cost per click that you're seeing, or that cost per whatever metric that you're looking at, because that audience is much more attractive. What I will tell you is that sometimes it's not easy to determine if it's competitors in your space or an indirect space. For example, I have a client who's in insurance, and granted, there's no Thanksgiving Day sales, Black Friday sales, Christmas sales on insurance. The market that he's looking at is going to be much more expensive, because those people who are in commercial industries, retail industries, are willing to pay that much more to get their attention before you do. So just keeping in mind that there may be some seasonality that had happened. You mentioned over the last 3 months with the holiday period. I bet a lot of advertisers saw that happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add. I was going to say the same thing. I think a lot of it's seasonality. Last weekend was a holiday weekend, so you may saw a little dip there. But definitely over the last 3 months, that's definitely important to recognize. I know our entire web traffic was increasing for our site up until December, or around Thanksgiving, and then it kind of took a dip and then kind of rebounded a little bit.
But way up in December, January, and only last week, just reach in terms of anything, even memes and things that are considered funny. I've had up to 1,500 likes and shares.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, it's just down to less, under 100.
Yeah, we never know. Like Nina said, Facebook's constantly playing with things. I know long term, we've definitely seen a huge decrease in organic engagement, and we'll just do a slight little boost to our posts, and add a little bit of money behind it, just for people within our network already who already like our page,
Yeah.
and it makes a huge difference. But it always kind of makes me wish for the good old days where you didn't have to put that money behind it, and if you had 1,800 people, you had a potential for 1,800 likes on that post. So it's, they're tweaking things, and it just makes it a guessing game sometimes.
In the back?
Yeah, my name's John. Could you talk a little bit about the different types of advertising that Facebook and LinkedIn, and maybe like the advantages and disadvantages?
So your question was the different types of advertising on LinkedIn
And Facebook,
and Facebook,
and then the advantages and disadvantages.
and the advantages and disadvantages of each type of advertising. Would you like to start?
From a recruiting point of view, I mean, Facebook is used by some organizations, and Facebook's trying to get, a lot more of the market that LinkedIn really dominates, but LinkedIn dominates it, and LinkedIn's making it more and more attractive and trying to get people in there. So I think most organizations will typically have a very well-evolved LinkedIn strategy, and there are multiple options that, large, small, and huge organizations can use. Facebook's trying to grab a slice of that.
LinkedIn has the types of ad formats that are available on LinkedIn, right? There's basically two categories you get thrown into. The people who don't have, I think it's $10,000 or more a month in budget, and those people who do have that, and those people who don't. If you do, then you get like the ad formats that are the nice fancy banners that are there on the top, the huge ads, the animated ones that are kind of, the larger blocks off to the right side of the content where it takes up like maybe 3/4 of the page above the fold. That's how you get those ad formats. If you do not have, I think it's $10,000 or more a month to apply to that, then there's two ad formats that are essentially available to you. They're the ads that are kind of in the sidebar area, and then you have the opportunity to write a post and then sponsor that post or sponsor that update, which says that, just like any other post, I think there's a few restrictions on image size and like the amount of characters that can go in your headline and the description, right? But, upon creating that particular post, you can say, all right, I want to promote that post, and you can define the audience to whom you want to promote that. And so those are really the two different ad formats that are available to you on LinkedIn. On Facebook, the ad formats include having your standard post that's available, and that post has the opportunity to show in 3 places. It can show in the desktop newsfeed, the main newsfeed, show in the mobile newsfeed, main newsfeed again, or it can show up on the, I think they call it right-hand side ads, which is essentially the sidebar ads. Not necessarily as effective, right side ads, unless you're in fashion. That's really one of the only industries I see that work effective in. Actually, fashion, and if you're in gossip columns, those tend to be the most effective for right side ads. Outside of that, I really think that the highest return is shown in those sponsored updates we mentioned on LinkedIn and on Facebook, having something that's actually in their feed and not necessarily off to the side.
Yeah, I think, again, it depends on what your audience is and what your goal is. I think LinkedIn's great for B2B. It's great for recruiting. I think we used it once when I was at an agency. We worked with Cree over in Durham, trying to hire engineers for them, recruit engineers, and it was great. It was more expensive, of course. LinkedIn is always a little bit pricier, but we got some great candidates, and there were definitely a lot of qualified candidates within that batch. And the results aren't as fast and furious as you sometimes get in Facebook, but it was effective for that objective. So, and then Facebook is kind of a one size fits all. It maybe not as great for recruiting, but they're probably making some dents in that space as well. So, again, it just depends where your audience is.
Anybody else? Yes.
Are ads on Facebook really targeted to certain keywords or interests or something? Or do I just get ads on my profile? Like if I have a profile, do I just get ads from everywhere? Or do I really get the traffic or.
So the question is, you want to know, how are you being targeted for advertising? Like, are they
I'll
tracking?
do it the other way too.
Yeah, so are you targeting keywords like you would on Google paid search, or how is the social media platforms targeting people?
Unfortunately, there are plenty of advertisers who do not understand the capabilities in how they can define their audience, and so their ads just kind of float out to anybody and everybody. So you may be in a position where you find a lot of content that is not necessarily relevant to you showing up in your feed. The other way that you're being targeted is let's say you have a lot of friends on Facebook who work in a particular industry that you don't. And there's an advertiser who's going after them and then assumes that you like the same content because you're a lookalike audience, right? So you're getting content that's meant for them and not necessarily you. Then there's a situation in which maybe your interests are being targeted. This could be keyword related. Facebook is not as agile with keyword targeting as some other platforms are. So like those keywords have to have like a kind of like a minimum number of people tied to it before Facebook will let you target them for it. So it's a situation in which more often than not, they're looking at age, they're looking at gender, they're looking at geolocation, like where you're located. They're looking at the same metrics for those people who are like you. They're looking at affinity. So like, let's say you've gone to, keep going back to e-commerce. Let's say you've gone to an e-commerce site. You know how they have like the little pop-up that comes in and says you can sign in with Facebook? If you do that, then it's assigned your Facebook profile to you as a user and now has gained like the things that you like on other content. And so now as a marketer, I can go and say, okay, well, I want to target everybody who has an interest in wine. And I know that because they might like wine, they might like entertainment plateware or, you know, things that aren't necessarily wine, but are kind of loosely associated with it. So there's just tons of ways you can target in Facebook.
Bob?
For creating your persona and the demographics that you're pursuing, so when you're really niching down your audience, what tools are you using to kind of hack away to get to know, okay, here are our biggest fans, what's the commonality between them, and how can we create a lookalike audience that we can target to?
So what tools do they use to identify their buyer personas and figure out their niche audience so that they can target them better?
So being a bank, we have a little bit of an advantage because people have to give us their information to create an account. But a lot of times you have a lot of these traditional organizations like banks or like other even larger tech companies, things like that. Like they have all of this customer data, they just don't know how to use it or how to tap into it. So we have an entire section of our marketing team devoted to customer intelligence and just putting together all of these disparate sources that we have from people who opened accounts, took out loans, things like that, and they're all pulling them together into what we call a data warehouse. This is not the case for everybody else, so yeah. So I won't get too deep into that. We have that, but I think we've also used surveys to learn a lot more about people. Just whether that's through social media or through email. A lot of times we'll have the emails, but we want to flesh out the persona. That's a great way to do that. Use a SurveyMonkey or just one of those free tools. We did do a big survey like that as well, where it was an online survey and it was also a phone survey. So we were able to collect a lot of data that way and learn how they want to be communicated with and some of those more day-to-day interaction information that we wanted to learn. So yeah, I think it's just all about doing your research and trying to learn about them that way. But Facebook also offers some great insights. If you're able to get on their page and you already have a decent following on your page, you can see all of that information and see all of that data.
Thinking of starting out. I mean,
right.
I've created this huge fan base, so yeah, I can from insights gather that. But I know that there are tools out there and some that Facebook doesn't like. But are there some legitimate tools that the average person can go to kind of get a good feel for target audience they want to pursue?
There's two great ways that the average person can probably get those insights. The first are there's tons of websites like similarweb.com, right? Essentially what this tool allows you to be able to do is to put in your website, right, wherever you're attracting this audience at, and down, if you scroll all the way to the bottom of all the cool things it tells you about your audience, right, and about the people coming to your website, is it has like this area for affinities, right? And it says, oh, of all of your audience, it seems that these particular, like this percentage of people is also interested in these areas too. Travel, food, dining, shopping, you know, tons of things like that. So that's a great way to get some initial insights. They have a paid platform too that gives, that kind of goes a little bit deeper, but they give you plenty of information for free as well. So that's one way. Another way that I've seen used effectively is, you know, we come back to this idea of integrated marketing, making sure your different channels complement each other. So, you know, if you were to implement like a Google AdWords campaign, you could apply as low as like essentially a few dollars a day if you wanted to. So what in the industry we call a prospecting campaign. This is where you put out display ads or banner ads across, you know, different types of content, and you can drill that content down as much as you want. But upon doing that, within the interface, Google gives you an opportunity to get additional insights, and it will categorize percentages of people by affinity. And they go a lot more in depth than some other companies and platforms. So now you can not only see whether or not they're interested in food, but what types of food. And is it, do they like dining, or do they like recipes? Do they like cooking at home? Do they like doing all this kind of stuff? And then upon getting like even a very short window of data, right, you can essentially use that to kind of guide some of those other opportunities as well.
Richard, when you have a new prospect who wants to hire somebody, what do you use to identify, because this is like an immediate thing where you need to figure out who you're going after. Is there a tool that you use to help that company identify where to find the people that they're looking for?
We'll try and help organizations really define the sort of person they're looking for, and if they're looking for, if it's a particular occupation, try and sort of get a profile of people who are high performers currently doing that role. So, you know, what sort of educational background, what sort of previous organizations did they work in, years of experience, that type of thing. And then on LinkedIn, LinkedIn and other sourcing tools, because it's not just about LinkedIn, do a specific search for people with those characteristics. And you probably would, obviously you need to put your general posting out there for sort of legal compliance purposes, but you can actually do some proactive sourcing as well. And that's usually very, very helpful. Plus also talking to the people that you know that have those characteristics right now. So who do you know? That's more effective than anything else. Employee referrals actually is the single best source of external hiring, because people will bring in people that are like them.
That's true. Any other question? Yes, Evan.
My name's Damon Rando, and I have a photo product e-commerce site called mypics2.com. And it's very important to us to drive Facebook likes. And some of our competitors that are much smaller, you know, we have 14,000 plus likes, and they have hundreds of thousands from small competitors. And we've been speculating that they're out there buying those likes somehow. Curious about any knowledge about that. And then what is the most economic way to get good likes? Because I only go out and buy likes out of the Philippines that are meaning.
Exactly. Do you want to rephrase the question? Or?
Yeah, go ahead and say it's the difference between buying likes and organic likes, or
the most economical way to get good likes, and what is going on out there. We write that they're going out there and buying trash likes.
So there are plenty of people who say, hey, you know, I'm putting out all this quality content and I'm only getting so many likes a day, or, you know, in a given period of time. And my competitors are putting out crap, and yet they're getting all these followers or all these likes or all these different things. They've got to be paying for it. And the truth of the matter is they probably are. It is a problem within the industry that happens. It is not obviously something that's approved by Facebook that you do, so you're walking into some murky waters when you do it. I don't recommend that you do it. The reason why is not so much that you'll get in trouble for it, but more so of a situation in which why would you pay for people who didn't genuinely like you and who have no intention of coming back, right? They have no intention of coming back. They have no intention of making that desired action we were talking about, whether it be a download or purchasing a product or visiting a page. Like, they simply liked you. And though that number of likes is very attractive to new traffic, and they're like, oh, well, you know, the trust factor quality of it, right? Oh, so many people like this, so yeah, I will too. The truth of the matter is that the money that you invest in getting those likes is not necessarily giving you a return from those individuals. And the people who do genuinely like what you have, getting them in as brand ambassadors almost. And you don't necessarily have to go out to them and say, hey, can you promote my brand, you know, all day long. But when I say getting them as brand ambassadors, it could be that, or it could be simply engaging in conversation with them and keeping them active, because the more active you are, when people come in and see that, it's like, oh, wow, this is a brand that really cares to listen. And people are much more attracted to that than not. And so that's a different set of resources, obviously, internally, to have people like sit all day and respond back to that. I think that's much more valuable than buying likes that aren't going to give you anything in the long run.
And also just look internally and use your employees to be, like Nina mentioned, be a brand ambassadors. So it could be as simple as them putting your Facebook link inside their email signatures, so that it's a subtle reminder every time they send an email out that people are seeing that and they're finding the right page. Sometimes there's similar names, things like that, and you know, and also get them to help share with their friends, share with their friends and family, and you can slowly build it out that way, and it's a little bit more organically and more genuine than just
We need a lot more volume than that. Though.
Yeah.
And what techniques have y'all found are most economical, most effective?
To generate likes on a page? Okay, you're probably not going to like this, but I'll be very honest with you. There are two ways that I think is going to give you the kind of volume you need to get likes, right? The first way is to focus on organic SEO, which is a very long-term strategy. A lot of people don't see immediate results from this channel. But as you do that, obviously it's more cost-effective because whatever you implement now has like an evergreen effect, right? Until the next algorithm. Yeah, it has kind of an evergreen effect to it. And so if you're looking at just cost, right, then I think that that's a really good way of doing it. Now, let's say you have this page that, you know, is ranking well organically, and you have those little like buttons on it so that they can like the page from there. Obviously, that's going to tie back to your Facebook account, and you'll see the likes start populating there, right? So it's like integrating these other channels to get people to like that's not just on Facebook. They can come to you via a different channel. The other way is a lot of my clients also implement paid search, not to their website, but to Facebook. So you don't have to send traffic to your website page. You can send that traffic to Facebook if you wanted to, and say, hey, you know, these people search for this particular keyword. I think my Facebook page is very relevant at getting them engaged in a conversation. So I'm going to direct the traffic there instead, and see if those particular campaigns, setting it up right so that you have the tracking in place, right? But seeing if those particular campaigns are effective in driving likes, or sending them to an internal page in your website where it has those buttons where they can like it. That's the best way to get the most relevant audience. So it's cost effective because it's relevant, right? And they're going to perform that desired action. And then populating those likes on Facebook. So it might not necessarily be within the Facebook channel itself.
Can I add to that? One good strategy is if you have on your likes page, if you've been putting out stuff, if there's something that really you have good response with from your audience, if that has a lot of likes and shares, then go ahead and boost that post and put a small ad to that, and then market that to a lookalike audience and to your internal audience, and that will create more buzz around that and drive more traffic.
Yeah, our most effective tactic right now has been to do contests to drive advertising.
Contests tend to do very well, special promotions like that. I think the only thing, additional piece of advice that I can give when you're doing contests is make sure that whatever kind of the prize is relevant to that user and not something that your irrelevant audience, or those, I hate to call them irrelevant, those people who might not necessarily be your desired audience are just trying to get in good for that promotion but aren't going to be like a loyal consumer later. So free iPads. Free iPhones, right? For those type of promotions tend to get a lot of people who are only in there for the moment and not necessarily going to be dedicated to your brand afterwards.
Yeah. Our giveaway is always our product, so they got to be interested in the product.
Yes, Michael.
Questions for Anita. Earlier you spoke of like top banners and side banners. Are you targeting more of a laptop user or a tablet user over a cell phone user?
So in Facebook, you have the channel, you have the opportunity to target desktop, tablet, and mobile, or you can turn off mobile. So there's not really a way to target one device over any others or to target them differently, unfortunately. So that is an issue. And I'm sorry, can we repeat the question so I know where I'm going with that?
Well, basically, I know whenever I see a banner on my phone, and it's easy for me to click on the banner by accident.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, if you spoke a lot about banners, and I just didn't know if your customers want to target cell phone users, do they want to get out to laptop users, tablet users? Do you usually have a customer or client come in that has a particular preference?
So there are clients who sell mobile apps. So they go after the mobile audience pretty heavily, recognizing that there's a potential for those invalid clicks where people might click accidentally, right? But recognizing that the overall value gives them a return that makes it tolerable, right? To some degree. And then there's those clients who, their conversion rates are much more effective on desktop. They have a lot of invalid clicks happening on mobile, and so they simply ask that we turn it off just to keep things profitable for them. There's plenty of occasions where you'll see conversions happening, and regardless of device, it's just a matter of what has the best conversion rate when you're looking for a device, and what you're willing to kind of tolerate in a loss, and then what kind of the return is. And those are just various metrics, but you wouldn't be able to see that if you didn't set up the campaign appropriately to begin with, to kind of look at that information. So again, very important.
Your analytics, do you see that there's a better return of one platform over another? Which one do you find it more beneficial?
Platform or device? I'm sorry.
Device.
Typically, you will see higher conversion rates happen on desktop. The reason why is people who are sitting in front of a desktop are more committed to the time that they're spending online, right? They're seated, they're comfortable for the most part. They're not up and doing other things. And if they're in front of a desktop, which is a much larger device, many occasions, then it's fewer distractions that they'll get away from the device. Now, there could be a million distractions happening on the actual page that they're looking at, but it's fewer distractions overall when you consider, like, can I see like my cat tearing down my curtains while I'm doing this, or those kinds of things. Tablet, so desktop generally has a better conversion rate. Mobile tends to, not all the time, it depends on industry, it depends on what you have on your website, but mobile tends to have a situation where people are spending less time on it because it's a mobile device. So it's less time on like the duration that they're spending in that session. They tend to look at fewer pages per visit, so they're not going to browse around your whole site. And then it's less conversion because you have a situation where if you don't capture them in the first, kind of like above, we used to call it above the fold, but now it's like on the first screen, like before you have to kind of scroll. It's a situation where if they have to scroll too far, they're just kind of going to give up in that process. So those tend to have lower conversion rates depending on the industry. Tablet is its own beast in that a lot of websites even today have not found the best layout for tablets. And the problem with that is tablets come in so many different sizes now, so many different browsers. There's so many technologies behind tablets, higher grade tablets, lower grade tablets. And depending on those browsers and whatnot, the way your website renders is going to differ. And even differing by like just a slight amount can change that conversion rate pretty significantly. And so that's a huge problem for tablet where, the fluctuation that happens in conversion rate almost seemingly has no pattern at all, unless your users are dedicated to a particular browser and a particular kind of device. For example, Apple probably doesn't have so much of a problem with their tablet users because their audience is far more loyal a lot, and so they're usually dedicated to certain tablets that obviously they're going to optimize their website for all of those different dimensions available. Does that make sense? Okay.
Any other questions? Yes.
I need to ask about alternatives. Anyone has experimented with other social media, like Google Plus? I hear it's going to do something like Google is endorsing it. Google is trying to promote it. YouTube, any other, like I use YouTube every single day. I never go to Facebook every single day, not even the first person. Like, how about
YouTube is
YouTube, I'm there all the time looking for important videos, studying something. LinkedIn, I'm on all the time, of course. So, what other platforms or where should we be looking? Why are we always, because we do need to learn a lot about Facebook if it's still going to be there for a while. Where else?
So are there other channels that are important that we should be looking at too, in addition to Facebook and LinkedIn?
If I want to market.
You mentioned YouTube. YouTube is a great platform for a lot of people. Love YouTube. It's fairly inexpensive, right? You get a lot of different ad formats available where it could be like you're overlaying an ad on top of content that somebody else has generated. You don't even have to generate the content. So that's fantastic, right? So you have a situation where you can, to overrated content, you can opt to have it in stream. So I'm sure if you've ever been watching something on YouTube and then another ad comes in between your next video, and you don't get paid unless somebody either clicks the ad or unless somebody, if they skip, you don't pay, right? So they have to watch it through completion or they have to actually click the ad that's within the video. So it's a great opportunity to, make sure that you're not spending a whole lot of money on invalid clicks, right?
And how much targeting can you do?
It's fantastic in the sense that you can target by age, you can target by gender, you can target by content that people are interested in, so interest and topics, and you can target by keyword. So it's you can manage it all from the Google AdWords platform. So generally what kind of features are available in that, you can do most of them in YouTube as well. So fantastic channel for those people who are interested in doing that. Industries who have tutorials find a lot of success with it. People obviously in fashion and makeup or how-to videos, things like that, where people are actually coming to learn more about a particular topic and then you serve them an ad where you're relevant to them. Is the best way.
It's been used very effectively in recruiting by organizations trying to promote their employment brand. It's much cheaper than any other medium to do that. And there have been some very successful campaigns around. I was hearing something last year from I think it was Ford Motor Company, were finding some type of engineers really hard to recruit. And so what they basically did is they put out this really exciting sort of corporate marketing thing. And then so if you want to hear about a webinar about our latest technology opportunities, click here or whatever. And then, so they invited those people to a webinar. And the webinar was basically the hiring manager of this requisition that they spent months and months and they hadn't filled it. And so they were almost like desperately thinking, well, what can we do? So they drew in this captive audience and they just started hiring those people very, very quickly.
You can target by occupation too,
yeah,
which is another reason that makes it effective.
So I think people are only really scratching the surface of its possibilities for employment branding, and that's going to become increasingly important as the recession disappears and organizations start scrambling for talent again. which is that's just over the horizon.
That rate at which people consume content on YouTube is like constantly on the rise, right? So it's the amount of people that you can reach. It's just constantly growing all the time, and people are constantly sharing those videos on other channels, right? So all of that is really effective. If you're asking about other platforms, that
Especially Google Plus. I would like to hear,
There is
what
no-
I hear you about Google Plus. Especially Google Plus. It's just like, should we start getting into
Google Plus is a bit of a heartbreak, right? Like there are so many plans for Google Plus, and it just there were plans that Google was endorsing it. They were building up all these communities and trying to start them. And I think one of the biggest problems for Google Plus is it was mostly just the Google fanatics who were interested. It didn't.
It's late to the game.
Yeah, it was late to the game, which was a huge problem for it. It doesn't have the same kind of targeting capabilities that you can do in other platforms per se. So it's more so a channel just to kind of post content, and then in that content you post, put a link to the other social channels, essentially, that you have available to you. It's great for communication, engaging conversation. It's a great forum kind of platform if you look at it in that sense, where you can get like the people who do use Google Plus are probably some of the most loyal audience members you will find. It is hard to find those communities. I think it's probably one of the best ways to.
There is no advertising in Google Plus.
But content. You put
Yeah.
content.
Well,
in
that's
the blog.
content is different. Yes.
So it's a marketing thing,
Yes.
not a
Right.
Yeah. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. They're always fun.
Mhm.
It's
Any
got
other
some great
questions?
features, but it's just like saying, it's just it was too late, I think, and there was so many people who were already established on their networks. It just didn't, unless it had a really strong selling feature. Like there are some like Hangouts and things like that, but I think people only have so much bandwidth, so it's kind of fallen by the wayside a little bit.
I look at Google Plus more as a tool. You can set up events, you could do Hangouts, you could have communities are much better than LinkedIn groups, and so as a tool, it's a really great platform. But for a social, it's great to share content, but to get all your friends and your family members on Google Plus, that's the challenge.
The way it integrates though with other platforms, which might make this effective, not necessarily social. It's a social media channel, obviously. The way you could integrate it with a platform where it would be give you some kind of return on the investment that you're applying into that content. One way to measure that is if you can get people to review you on your Google Plus or Places page or something like that. If you can get them to give you reviews and tie that into a non-social channel like paid search will pull that and put like your star rating in your ad. And the only way you can get that star rating is if you have a Google Plus page. So otherwise you can't pull in that kind of data. So
the only people who come to you to Google Plus to rate you are people who are unhappy.
yeah.
The people who are happy, but never any come to Google Plus to rate you.
As a brand, unless you're in a restaurant, like if you're in the food industry, then you might get some good reviews, or apps get good reviews or have the potential to.
Or you beg. Anybody else have questions? Well, thank you so much for coming tonight. I hope you got some good, useful information.